this is my informative speech for SPC2608, and it is titled Where the Wildlife Is. And I will be speaking about the wildlife of the Galapagos Islands. So about 600 miles off the coast of Ecuador are where the Galapagos Islands are located, and they are known to be some of the most volcanic areas in the world. I chose this topic because I love wildlife and I've heard great things about the Galapagos Islands wildlife. And I'm going to talk about the reptiles, the flora, and some aquatic life. So the reptiles, while most of the world is known for mammals, the Galapagos Islands are famously known for their reptiles. They have a Galapagos green turtle, which breeds only on this island, which means that they are endemic to the island. They are seen in a few places. They are considered to be endangered on the Galapagos Islands because the fishermen like to have their shells in their meat to eat and the shells to sell. They are famously known to have the cats and rats and dogs feed on their eggs, which also has them on the endangered species list because they don't have very many hatchlings due to that. And trade of the Galapagos green turtles has been outlawed in the market, which has helped to stop the selling of the meat and the shells. Another famous reptile is the lava lizard, which they are among the most abundant reptiles of the Galapagos. So if you go there, they're the most likely lizards to be seen. They are found across 10 of the central islands. Commonly, they are seen to have push-up contests to see who is king. So basically what they'll do is push-ups to try and intimidate the other male into being scared and not trying to come into their territory. They have natural predators including hawks, herons, snakes, scorpions, and even cannibalism by other lava lizards. They like to eat each other apparently, which is interesting. But the island is most famous for their #1 reptile, the giant tortoise. It is actually, the Galapagos is derived from an old Spanish word meaning tortoises. So it's basically like the island mascot. They are huge. So I'm about 5'4" in height, which translates to about 1.62 meters. And the average height or the average size of a giant tortoise is 1.5 meters. So just a little bit smaller than I am. They spend an average of 16 hours resting, which is awesome. They eat grass, fruit, and the cactus pods. They are mainly found in Santa Cruz Highlands and the Alcedo volcano on Isabela, which is the main island of the Galapagos Islands. They're endangered due to species eating their eggs and trampling their nests. They are also killed for their meat, and they are exploited for their oil, which they like to use for burning candles and making light. I didn't know that turtles had oil, but apparently they do. They are protected. The Charles Darwin Research Station collects the eggs and incubates them, and they let them grow up and get bigger until they are big enough to defend themselves against other animals. But again, they are endangered, so that's why they do that. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is the flora. So although the environment seems like a harsh rocky desert, they actually have lots of plants that can flourish there because they have adapted to the harsh environment. The plants are actually just as unique as the animals. They just don't get as much credit because people are more into the animals, but they do have very interesting plants as well. Again, most of the plants are endemic, which means that they are not found anywhere else in the world. They have their own cotton species, pepper, passion flower, and guava, which is not found anywhere else, so it's different. Obviously, the whole world has that stuff, but it's a different type. They have 4 primary ecosystems, which are formed by the climate and the elevation levels. So the first one, which is the very lowest, it's the lowlands, and it's mostly like cactus, so it's very much desert-like. The second one is subtropical, and there's lots of rain. And then the third one is a very humid, very dense forest. And then the fourth one, which is the highest elevation, has the grass and the ferns. Only the biggest island, which is again Isabella, which I mentioned earlier, has all four of the ecosystems. All of the other islands are one or the other. So next is the aquatic life, which is really cool. Nearly 20% of the marine life in the Galapagos they are endemic. The marine iguana is what they're most famous for, which, in case you didn't know, they are the only sea-going lizards in the world. They feed on algae, and they have like high concentrations of salt in their diet, obviously because they eat from the sea, and they mostly like play around in the sea too. So what they do to get rid of the salt in their blood is they'll filter the blood up here at their nose, and then whenever it's like filtered enough, they'll sneeze out the salt and they'll get like salt crystals on their nose. So if you see them and there's like salt crystals, that's why, because they're trying to get rid of all the salt in their blood, which I thought was really cool, but kind of gross too, because it's like their snot is just sitting on their nose. The large ones usually go out to sea to like go for their food, and what they'll do, they have like such long claws, and they're so strong because they're so big, they can like attach and hold on with their claws to the rocks so that they can hold against the current. But the small ones like to stay up near the shore in like the little ponds or like by the shore to feed on the algae because they're not as strong. Cats and dogs have greatly affected the numbers of marine iguanas because the smaller ones are not equipped to defend themselves. So the small ones, obviously, they can't hold the current, or like dogs and cats, so the cats like feed on them and the dogs feed on them. But they are protected under the Ecuadorian law too, like against humans and like hunting and poaching and all that. And then next is the Galapagos penguin, which is the northernmost penguin. Like, so this is the farthest you'll find penguins, which I thought was really cool because usually you hear about them living in like colder environments. They nest entirely in the tropics. It's one of the smallest penguins in the world, but they can reach up to 35 miles an hour when they're hunting, which is honestly pretty fast. They eat cold water schooling fish like anchovies, mullet, and sardines, and they're found mainly on the island of Isabella, which is the main island, and then Fernandina. And their land predators are owls, snakes, and hawks, which is interesting. I guess because they're so small, they can be picked up by hawks and taken away, although you don't really think of penguins being that little. And in the sea lions are their major like predator, but also fur seals and sharks. And then sometimes they can get caught in the fishing nets and get stuck, and then they will either die or be brought up to like land. So they are endangered because of how much they are hunted. And then that is all that I have for you. So these topics were just some of the Galapagos wildlife. Obviously there's a lot more that I didn't cover. Like, they have some really amazing birds as well, but I just didn't have time in my speech to cover it. And again, the Galapagos Islands are widely known for their unique wildlife. And thank you for listening. I don't know about you guys, but I'd like to visit the Galapagos one day.
Thank you.